Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We are in Esther chapter 4. We're going to be starting verse 13 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16. Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we start verse 13, the context is Mordecai tells Esther that she needs to go into the king and in order to help the Jews to help deliver the Jews from this decree by the king. And she tells Mordecai, I haven't been called to see the king for 30 days now. It's going to be dangerous for me to go there. And if I present myself to the king, if the king doesn't hold out the golden scepter, well, there's only one decree, and that is I have to be killed. So it's a risk. So you need to know what's going on here, Mordecai, that I will do it, but I'm going to be, my life is at risk doing it, all right? Now we come into verse 13, and it says, Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, Think not with yourself that you shall escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if you hold your peace and do nothing at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether you are come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So he says here in verse 13 that being a member of the king's family and living in the king's house will not make her exempt, right, from the king's decree. Just because she's queen is not going to make her exempt from being killed as a Jew. So she needs to understand that, that think not within yourself that you shall escape the king's house more than all the Jews. Well, I'm the queen, I don't have to be killed with these Jews because I'm queen. Well, no. You will be killed also. Why? Simply because you are a Jew. Then verse 14, he says, in verse 14, Mordecai enlightens us and Esther as to why God made her beautiful and loved, and why she is loved by the king, and why she was made queen. It was not for her glory or for her vanity, but it was to save a nation. It was to save a nation. The reason why all this is happening was the reason why God made her beautiful, the reason why God put her in the position where she is now as being queen, is because the nation of Israel needed to be saved. So he says here, for if you altogether hold your peace, if you say nothing and do nothing at this time, then shall their enlargement. Now, this Hebrew word for enlargement means to breathe or breathing, or like breathing room. It means to be a relief. And then it says here, and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. All right, so that their deliverance will arise to the Jews from somewhere else. Now, Mordecai was confident that God would deliver the Jews either by using people or by using divine intervention, but one way or another, God would not allow the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai was confident of it. And this is what he says here in verse 14. He says, if you hold your peace, God is going to deliver the Jews somehow, somewhere. It's going to happen. And then it says here, you and your fathers, right? You and your father's house will be destroyed. For Esther to not stand up for the Jews would bring God's vengeance against her and her father's house. You may say her father is dead. Well, I don't know. Maybe the relatives, some other relatives, Mordecai and stuff. This is no time to turn her head away. If Esther does not help them, though the Jews be saved by some other way, she will not escape God's discipline. She was raised up by God for this specific purpose. And if she lets it go by, God will deliver them, but she will be punished. And then it says, and who knows if you've been brought to this place, what, for such a time as this? Mordecai directs Esther's thoughts upon the fact that maybe all that she has experienced since being taken to the king's house as a virgin was because God was behind it all. She needed to adjust her focus and see that God has a plan also. These would be words of encouragement and hope that if God truly is the author of all that has happened to her in her life, then she can go to the king with a measure of confidence. So here Mordecai is trying to build, in a sense, he's telling her the seriousness of what she needs to do, but he's giving her the confidence, saying that, look, if it's true that God has put you in this place, then you can go to the king with confidence, not with tremendous fear, but you can go with a measure of confidence that God is behind it all. You know, there are times in our life when we question if God's providence put us in this situation at just this time. Did God bring this person into my life for a reason? Why does God want me to hear about this person's family or this person's situation? Like Esther, God works into us his qualities that he wants us to have. And then he puts us in situations to help others. Sometimes we wonder, why did this person call me? Right? Why did they call me and tell me about their problem? Right? Or you know, when I was at the store, why did this person talk to me? Right? And things, why was I put here at this time to see this person or to hear this thing? And we have to see, is God behind this? God, did you organize this? Did you organize me to be at this place at this time to hear this thing or to see this thing, right? And this is, sometimes we need to have our hearts adjusted to God's will and to God's providence in our life. And then in verses 15 to 17 it says, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. All right. Now, it says here in verse 16 that she wanted them to fast for her. She wanted all the Jews to fast for her, right? Now, the purpose for fasting is seen in Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58, verse 6. And it says here, is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke. This is the purpose of fasting, is to let the oppressed go free, to loose the bands of wickedness, right? To undo the heavy burdens. When we fast, it is so that we would spend that time in prayer, not in selfish pursuits. Spend your lunchtime and your dinner time, whatever time you're taking, your breakfast time, if you're fasting at breakfast, take it and use it for a time of prayer. Don't just not eat or things and serve yourself. But when we fast, we deny ourselves food at that time so that we can devote ourselves to prayer and to seeking God's will. We see that Mordecai, to some degree, brought up Esther in the Jewish faith, and she is now applying her faith in the Lord, in the Lord God of Israel, to be with her and to protect her and to protect the Jews. So when she says here, gather together the Jews that are present in Shushan and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days. What she's exhibiting, she's proclaiming her faith in God. Although Esther is one of the 2 books of the Bible where God is never mentioned. Again, it's Esther and Song of Solomon. And here, by her saying, fast ye for me, she's implying her faith in God. And she's implying that she has a strong faith. Fast for me and pray for me. Right? So she says, I and my maidens will fast. Now, either she had Jewish maidens, or her maidens became proselytes. They became Jewish converts, right? Or at least they were sympathetic to her situation. They might have been Persian maids and sympathetic to her situation. But it seems that Esther had a great influence on her maidens, and now that she's queen, and maybe it's possible they even know she's Jewish. But again, at this time, the king doesn't know anything about her nationality. King doesn't know. It's all secret. She's keeping it secret too. Again, if they don't ask, don't tell. So she and her maidens will fast. And I'm sure they knew, the maidens knew why, the whole situation about her being Jewish and that her life was at risk. And therefore, now they fast also. Whether they were Jewish maidens, we don't know. Whether they were proselytes, we don't know. But for sure, they would fast with her. And then she says, if I perish, I perish. And like Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 6, Paul says, for I am now ready to be offered. I'm ready to be offered. She was putting her whole existence into God's hands. All she had and all that she enjoyed as being queen, she was willingly laying it down, laying it aside so that she could save her people. She was basically denying everything to go to the king to save her people. She was putting it, in a sense, like Vashti did years ago, like Vashti did when the king called her in and wanted her to dance before all these drunken men. And she said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to go, and I'm a woman. I'm not going to go and flaunt myself in front of all these men here and parade around in some, clothes and stuff to please their, lust of their flesh. No, she's not going to do it. She risked everything. Well, here, Esther is doing the same thing. She's risking her position as a queen and everything that she has to go and present herself to the king to save her people. Eventually, as we face death, we also are challenged to lay aside everything of this temporal life and to set our hearts on our permanent home in heaven. We will die with, will we die with attachments to this world? Or will we cast our eyes toward heaven, not looking back? Sure, we will miss loved ones, and people we ministered to also. But beyond that, let the rest go. When it comes time for us to die, we're gonna miss our families and friends and things and people that we may have shared the gospel with. But beyond that, let the rest go. Let the house and the cars and whatever, boats and property, let it go. This is all temporal. It's going to burn anyways. God's going to destroy it anyways. Let it go. And then in verse 17 it says, so Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. So Mordecai now goes and he tells all the Jews that are in Shushan to start fasting. And it is very possible that according to chapter 3 and verse 12, that this is still the 13th day of the first month, all right? Which would mean that the very next day, which would be the 14th, would be the beginning of the Jewish Passover. All right? The 14th day of the first month is the beginning of the Passover. All right? Now, in that's seen in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 5 through 8. Leviticus 23, 5 through 8. The 14th day of the first month was determined to be the beginning of the Passover. Therefore, the 14th through the 16th, the first 3 days would be spent fasting. So they were entering into the Jewish Passover. And maybe they weren't celebrating it at that time. We don't know. But they were entering into the Jewish Passover, and the first 3 days of the Passover would be spent fasting. Now, here's a question as we finish this lesson. Had the Jews which stayed behind in Persia and not returned to Jerusalem, had they been celebrating the Passover all these years? The answer is we don't know. The Bible doesn't say if every year they were celebrating the Passover. But there is no mention at all of the Passover being beginning there's no mention at all of Passover beginning for the Jews. It doesn't say that, the Jews are getting ready to start celebrating the Passover. Either the Jews stopped celebrating the Passover in Persia, or the author of Esther was focusing his attention on the events and not dealing with other things. All right? So my guess is that probably the people, the Jewish nation in Persia had stopped celebrating the Passover. But I could be wrong, completely wrong. We don't know if every year they celebrated the Passover. All right? We're going to continue chapter 5 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.